Good morning, everyone. So glad that you all decided to be here and join us today. I'm just coming off of two what I found to be remarkable services. One was Santa Rosa and one was San Jose. And what was really interesting was they were similar and yet very different. And one of them was actually Edward had decided to do the service that he had done about a year ago. So it was so kind of spot on for what we're doing in the world today, which I thought was wonderful. And then the San Jose, Reverend Bruner wasn't in today. He's traveling. So one of his associate ministers, who's Reverend Susan Overland, and I've only heard Susan speak a couple of times, well, more than a couple, but I've heard her a few, and she always amazes me. So if you're looking for more inspiration, those are places that I would totally recommend you head for. So I'm gonna also switch us over to this view, speaker view. Mostly it just works better for the recording. And I just want to also remind you that for whatever reason you came here today, I know that somewhere in the message, in the treatment, in the music, or just in us being together and having some conversation, that what is closest to your heart right now, what you were seeking, is exactly what you're going to find in this morning. That's my affirmation for today. So we're going to begin the formal part of this service with an opening treatment. And today our treatment will be given by Victoria Wright. So Victoria, unmute yourself and take it away.
Unmute, okay. No. Okay, that's all. Sorry, I pushed the wrong button and almost left the meeting. Hello. Oh. We are all treasures. We are the beloveds of the beloved. And we can trust our feelings. We can delve deep and trust our deep feelings, heart to heart. We can trust the unfoldment as this time unfolds, as the beauty of the autumn unfolds, as the rain comes and kisses us and fills our aquifers, as the spirit that dwells within each of us. Even though we seem apart, we are all one in spirit. We are all one together in community. I know I so appreciate these Sunday Zooms, these services, and seeing everyone. It buoys me up, fills me with that sense of connection, which is always there. We are connected through the God self in each and every one of us. We are all lifted up into the loving heart and mind of one spirit, one God, one universal being. And as we live and love spontaneously in our lives, we are the expressions of that oneness, of that great spirit. And it comes in through our hearts, comes in through our higher wisdom self, and it moves out through us and expanding into our community, our world, our universe. We are all one in the oneness. There is no separation. We are together. We are full of light and love and power and joy. And as we enjoy this service together, we know that this is so. And together we say, and so it is.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. Thank you. Okay, and so now we're moving right along. We're going to expand that opening with some inspiration and lovely music from Mary Buckley. So Mary, your turn.
Thank you, Candice. I hope this is something uplifting for you. I'm sure you've heard me and or Madge invoke the name of Harmony Grisman. I wrote this song, Harmony didn't write it, but it was in one of her songwriters workshops. And the prompt of the day was she emailed each of us a photo. I was gonna ask to screen share it, but I realized I don't have to, I have it printed out here. She said, pretend you're commissioned to write a song about this, whatever the picture was, you know, a flower or a pair of boots, whatever. And this was my photo. Let's see if you can see it. It's a little girl at a chalkboard with lots of scribbles. And it reminds me of the look on her, I love the look on her face. It's kind of like, hey, what are you doing? I'm already in trouble. You're gonna make it worse. It reminded me of my Catholic upbringing and the blackboards. Anyway, so this is the song I wrote. The teacher stepped away and Ruby wants to play. She sees a piece of chalk and she takes a little walk. She takes the chalk in hand like a grown-up with a plan. Reaching up, Ruby begins making lines and swirls and things. Under her hand appear the arcs and curves that the world is made of. Atomic orbits, spiraling galaxies, a neural nexus, Fibonacci sequences, random lines revealing signs behind the scenes. Spelled out it seems, if we could unravel those tangled lines, maybe we'd know all we need to know about life in the world after all this time. There's a noise in the hall, coming through the wall. The teacher's coming back. Ruby tosses down the chalk, grabs the eraser, wipes it back to a normal shade of black, and then Ruby takes her place, empties expression from her face. The teacher walks in and says, now class, let's begin. Thanks.
I love that. That's great. Thank you, Mary. Okay. So my topic today is, I really need to give credit to David Bruner. This was a talk that he gave several months ago, and some of it was just percolating back up for me this week. So I went and expanded it into my, make it my own. So the topic is practice makes perfect. So I guess I'm gonna be honest and talk to you about my own personal practice, my spiritual practice. And what I know is that I really need to practice my practice. And there was Well, years ago, my daughter Julia was in a dance studio to take a class, and she was, off in the studio, and I was just in the waiting room waiting for her. And there was a sign on the wall, and it was specifically for the ballet dancers, and it said, if you miss one day of class, you know. If you miss 2 days, your teacher knows. If you miss 3 days, everybody knows. And it was just this, I remember just reading it and applying it to myself. And it's when I'm very consistent about my practice, it makes a big difference in my life. But there have been times when I've talked myself into, I'm too busy, I don't have time. And then there's just things that come up that are really difficult. And the idea of a practice during that time just sort of flies out of my brain. And I discovered that that's been happening for me recently. So I thought, yeah, let's look at how to practice my practice in a more meaningful way. So I'm going to share that with you. And one of the things that I'm getting really clear about when I'm practicing my practice is that I'm not necessarily wanting an exact outcome. And I think that's important, or at least it is for me. So when I start finding myself looking for an exact outcome, for an exact answer, that's some of the places where I will get most discombobulated. I recognize that I need to give up the need for this or anything else, whatever that circumstance, whatever that person, whatever is going on. I need to give up the need for it to be any different than it is. Now, I recognize that for me and for probably everybody, there's a lot of things happening on the planet and in the world that we really want to have different. So can I be satisfied with recognizing that the need for it to be different and it being different are not the same thing? But I will also admit that to give up the need for something to be different is really difficult. So in the meantime, what can I do? And I kind of discovered that there's a couple of avenues, and I think I'm going to have to back up just a little bit, because one of those avenues is basically checking in with yourself, and part of that check-in is with who you are physically. And one of the things, because I mean, most of you guys know, in the last 10 years, I've had several health issues, you might say, that took me by surprise. Every single one of them, I was always surprised. I was like, well, why is this happening? And one of the things that I have learned through that journey that I'm on is that I am not my body. And why I want to bring that up is because it isn't just this physical form that represents Candice Becket in the world today. My body is my life, my home, the work that I do, the play that I do, that's all my body. And so to start to recognize that I am not my body. I have one, I have a life, I have a body, but it is not all of who or what I am. And I need to start remembering that when things get uncomfortable or tense. So I can talk mostly about that in physical analogies because of the things that happened to me. So like I said, most of you know I had it'll be 10 years next February. I had a very major surgery, and a lot of you know that I sometimes refer to it was my death-defying surgery, because I actually did check out a couple of times and had to be resuscitated. And then a couple of years later, I fell and broke my ankle. And a couple of years after that, I fell and broke my shoulder. It has now been, well, it's been 3 years since I broke my shoulder, but it's been 2 since I had my surgery. So it's been 2 years. and everything's going great so far. Let's go with that. So I just want to talk to you about in all three of those cases, when I was doing my, the surgery, the ankle, the shoulder, at some point I was in a hospital. And probably the worst part, and I'll tell you actually the worst part about falling and breaking my shoulder was I was outside a restaurant with a lot of people. I was at a planning meeting, so there was probably 25 or so people. They were mostly in the restaurant, but a couple of the people I was walking with ran and got them, and suddenly they were all outside. And one of the worst parts was seeing how frightened everyone was. And I was in such excruciating pain. I still had this moment of like trying to make it okay for them. And but I think my big realization with that and with the other physical things I've had gone on is that when something happens to me, it impacts others. And in this case, this was, this scary, painful experience, and watching the fear in other people who were trying to be supportive of me, and just having that recognition that they were also being impacted. I'll tell you though, in the surgery case, I guess I was never in an emergency room, but I was in the ICU for like a week. And but the other two, with both my ankle and my shoulder, I was in emergency room situations. And what I now, and this is hindsight because it wasn't this clear in those moments, even though I did have snatches of clarity. What I know now is all of those experiences were holy. They were sacred for me. There was so much for me to learn. I've shared this story with a lot of you, but when I was, when they were getting ready to take me down to the ICU, because after my surgery, they put me in a regular room, and then I crashed, and that's, I had to be resuscitated, so they were moving me to the ICU. And I was in excruciating pain. And they were talking to me, trying to make sure that I knew who I was and where I was and things like that. But I know that my head was going back and forth, and I kept repeating, my God, help me, help me. My God, help me, help me. And one of the doctors bends over and says to me, we're doing everything we can. And I said to her, I'm not talking to you. And I suddenly, even in that moment, had this awareness that something greater was going on than just what was physically happening to me in my body. That was getting most of my attention, but this little tiny part of me, it's like there's something bigger. There's something greater also happening. So years later, I'm in an emergency room with my broken shoulder, which was also excruciatingly painful. And that time I did have the forethought, because I laid on a gurney in the hallway, because the place was so packed, and this was a big hospital in Southern California, and it was there were no rooms for me to be admitted into the inside. So I was in a hallway in the emergency room, and the only person that was sitting with me was an ambulance attendant, and he was very sweet. I think we were watching the World Series. I can't remember what teams were playing, but I do know it was October and it was baseball. And I'm laying there, and I remembered that I wasn't my body. And he actually said, I don't understand how you can be so still. You must be just in so much pain. And I said, yeah, I am. But, what good would that be? And what I can remember is, I'm more than this. And I don't know that he understood those words, but he, kind of nodded an appreciative look and went on. So remembering that you're not your body, that, or whatever those circumstances that are circulating around you that are causing you discomfort, that are causing you pain, that are causing you frustration, that's not all you are. Now, I will tell you, when I've had these experiences with my physical body, I will also do my best to remember, even in that amount of pain, that I love my body and that I'm grateful to it. And because of that, I have begun to recognize that my body can help me with my practice if I'm willing to kind of go beyond that immediate pain and just allow it to become part of the flow that I'm in. So I'm bringing that up just because it was the best example I could come up with about when you really are going to be more than something else. And that's very, that's very visceral, that it's your own physical body. But right now in the world, there's a lot of things that are causing us pain or frustration or anxiety, add your word in there. But the bottom line is we have a world, but it is not the totality of who we are. The circumstances that we're going through are not the totality of who we are. But again, for me, also being a witness to what's going on in the world, part of what is the hardest thing or the worst thing is seeing how frightened other people are. And I don't really even care what their point of view is. What I'm seeing is a lot of really frightened people. And what I know is that just like what happens to me impacts others, what's happening to the others is impacting me. So I can see and I can feel the emergency of what's happening in the world. Like there is so much pain. But I need to also, as I stand witness to all of that, I need to remember that this world is not the totality of who we are, and that we can go ahead and love our world. We can be grateful for our world, and we can do what we know to do to have a world that we are experiencing right now help us with our practice. So here's the kind of question. So why do we have a spiritual practice? And why do we call it a practice? And that gets back to the title, practice makes perfect. The more we're willing to spend some time, and I'm not talking about that you have to, go and chant or fast or be in meditation for hours and hours a day, but how do you bring what you believe, practice it in every circumstance in your life as they come up. But we do need to practice, and that means all of us need to practice. So one of my realizations that came up for me again this week is that I can teach you how to treat. I can teach you how to meditate. I can teach you how to chant. I can teach you spiritually important songs. And you can receive all of that wonderful instruction from lots of other places and lots of other people's. But the one thing is, until you're willing and ready to put it into practice, it's just knowledge. It's not practical. So your practice becomes essential because it is how you're going to start impacting the world, not just your individual life, even though that is where it will start and that's where you'll feel it first. But to be aware that all the teachings in the world can't do anything for you until you're ready to practice, and then anything can happen. So one of the things, and you can just do this right now if you want to put a couple of things in the chat, if they come up for you, that would be cool too. But I just want you to consider and just mentally describe why you do a spiritual practice. Why? What's the point? And I'll go first. I have a spiritual practice because I care about my world. I have a spiritual practice because I recognize that how I move through the world affects everything. And if we want a world that works for everyone, we need to make time for being the very best possible person we can be. So we need to take time for a spiritual practice, and whatever that involves. And a lot of us know that there's prayer, affirmative prayer, what we call treatment. There's meditation, but spiritual practice also is seva. So volunteering, being generous with your time, being generous with your money, all of that becomes part of your spiritual practice. And how we approach everything. I love to share, because one of my favorite seva practices is doing the dishes. And seva is like this, in its best place, it's anonymous. So I'm not going out and washing dishes in somebody's house where I don't know them, but I wash dishes at my own. And part of the practice is recognizing that this too is God, and I can get into, and I won't go into it today, all sorts of metaphysical meanings for washing a plate, but I'm also preparing it for the next God being. And it's like, if you knew that God, or whoever you think of, some great hero of yours is about to come to eat with you, you would want to prepare it in such a way that it shows a lot of honor. So that's what I do while I'm washing my dishes, or vacuuming my floor, or doing the laundry, or, trimming a tree. It's all these things. What I can tell you about that kind of a practice where it starts to move into your life, it's not just the formal part, which is also really important, of just meditating, praying, opening ourselves to guidance. But to actually take those early steps into how to do it in the world, that takes real commitment. In the talk that Susan Overland was giving this morning from San Jose, she said something about the place to start is to make the commitment to do one act of kindness every day. And she said, and sometimes that's just going to be that you smiled at somebody, or that you said hello. And one of my favorite stories about that was I was in New York years ago. I was on a big train trip, so this is like 20 years ago, because it was 2000. And I was in Penn Station, and I felt really lost. I couldn't figure out the signage, and I finally saw a place, and I thought, well, they could probably, but it was more like a security place. It was officers. I couldn't find just where to go for help place. So I went, well, I'm just going to go ask them. And I got up in this very, what I would say stereotypical New York police officer when I get to the counter. And I was back, and I was watching. He was very gruff with everybody. And when I got up to the counter, and he was kind of goes, well, and I said, just kind of flew out of my mouth. I said, are you okay? And he looked so startled, and he goes, what? And I said, well, you seem a little stressed. Are you all right? And he said, nobody's asked me that today, so I'm actually feeling much better right now. Thank you. What can I do for you? He had every answer I needed. And when I thought about that, it was for me an act of kindness, but it was also for me remembering that in the midst of chaos, that there is something I could do. that actually showed up. Now, in that moment, I wasn't thinking this, but what showed up was my practice. And part of my practice is to be kind as often and as in a biggest way as I can. This was very small, it was very gentle, but it made a huge difference. It's part of my practice. But while we're talking about in the midst of chaos, because sometimes it isn't something where you can actually speak. You're just going, this is crazy. I don't know what to do. It's going crazy. There's a book, I can't remember the name of the book, but the author is Dan Mosley. And he says that in the midst of chaos, you have to remember that when you can't go out, go in. And I thought, wow. So, you know, if you can't escape the chaos, what do? And it has to do not diving in to perpetuate the chaos, but to dive in to bring this sense of wholeness, to bring your practice into it and see the changes. So I know right now that a lot of us are having a lot of questions, and, you know, for me, it's like, when am I ever going to get to see, you know, my grandchildren in Colorado again? When am I going to feel safe to travel? When am I going to feel safe to go outside my house without a mask? And where's the economy going? And what's going on with the government? When is any of this going to get any better? It's, you know, or, you know, one of the questions popped up for me one time this week, is this about to get much, much worse? So there are a lot of questions, and here's what Reverend Mosley says. He says it's time for us to lean into the questions without insisting on any particular, which to me that way, without insisting on my answer, that it has to look this way, but to lean in. I love the idea of leaning in, because it's when we're willing to lean in that we are also opening ourselves to greater possibilities, greater potential than we have created just in our little brains, and kind of get a little fixated and stuck there. There's a Celtic saying that something like this: may my prayer be an invitation to let life reveal itself to me. I just love that. May my prayer be an invitation to let life reveal itself to me. So what if in the midst of something that we don't understand or we're afraid of or whatever, what if the prayer becomes, show me where to stand, let my life present itself appropriately here so that I can be part of the answer? I think that that's a really powerful way to be in practice. And when pondering, I think instead of allowing the chaos or the frustration or the fear to really kind of take over, how about pondering it? To step back just a little bit, and then in the middle of it, ask, why am I feeling anxious? You know, where is this tension coming from? What is this anger about? And just let the question be and let the answer reveal itself, because I know that Sigmund Freud said a cigar is sometimes only a cigar. Candice Becket, the metaphysician, says a cigar is never just a cigar. It's really important for us to look beyond, and there are messages, there are lessons deeply within everything that we're experiencing right now. And as we lean in, we can allow the question to reveal the answer. And as you're leaning in, to start to just affirm that the answer will appear, and it may not come the way you expect it. I know often I've been, trying to lead in, and then I'm just not thinking about it, which means I'm pretty open, and I'll hear a song, or I'll overhear a comment, or something I read will suddenly pop into my mind, and all I need to do is pay attention. And I have an example of this. This was actually years ago, and I was in Santa Rosa, but I was on my way back up here, to prepare for Sunday. And I was like, I have no idea what I want to talk about. And I looked up, and there was a sign, and it said, well, well, well. And that's all I saw was well, well, well. But I almost felt this lightness within my heart as I went, oh, we should talk about wholeness. We should talk about, perfect expression in all things, because I saw that sign that said, well, well, well. So that's what I mean. There's also some really fun little tricks about if you're looking for an answer for anything, you just pick up a book that you care about. I have a bunch of science and mind textbooks right over there. So that could be one. And you ask the question, you open the book and you just point, and then you read it. And it's amazing how many answers I've received, because I was ready and this was something I trusted. So there's all sorts of ways to lean in and allowing answers to appear. So take a chance. There was another book that I just got a little brief synopsis of, but the book is titled, What's in the Way is the Way. And the book is by Mary O'Malley. And in that book, she talks about several things, but she talks about that whether it's a money challenge, relationship, health, that what we normally want is we just want that to go away. We want it to disappear. And so Ms. O'Malley is suggesting that instead of disappearing it, we lean in. We get curious about it. And we use what is here to get to the other side. So I was really impressed with that. And so here are just a couple of quotes from her. The first one is, the opposite of fear is curiosity. And I don't know why that just woke me up, but I thought, wow, it's not bravery, it's not courage, it's curiosity. To be willing to look at the thing you don't know, because fear is almost always something we don't know or don't understand. So what if we got curious about it? She also says that pain was in the way until I became curious. And I just thought that was an amazing thought, just to allow ourselves to be curious and move through the pain because of our curiosity. So what I know about my curiosity, and when I start asking the questions, so what's this about? Even though that seems maybe, because I get it, there's no God up in heaven who might go ahead and give me an answer. I know that my God is everywhere present and moving through and with me all the time. So I know that God is present in my questions and in the empty space that I create within my own head when I'm not cluttering it with normal prescribed answers, that God can meet me in my unanswered questions, and what emerges will represent infinite intelligence, divine wisdom, and the actual heart of God, because that is what is open when we ask the questions. And you can lean into the questions, and you can hear that universal intelligence give you answers, again, through all kinds of ways, known and unknown, expected and unexpected. So I think what we're being asked to do is become avatars. Now, I know that there was a very popular movie a long time ago, and there's been a couple of TV shows animated, and I don't think any of them quite grasp what an avatar is. But in Hindu mythology, an avatar is a deity, a god, that descends to earth in an incarnate form, so in a physical form, some kind of manifested shape. But an avatar is the incarnation of God. That's basically it. So for us in metaphysics, who we all know that it's all God, it's all good, it's all unfolding, in that we become avatars when we allow ourselves to embody, to become the personification, to become the channel through which a principle, an attitude, a view of life, the sacred can flow. So let's make a commitment to look at that and allow who we truly are to be present, because we are so much more than this, whatever this is for you today. So, okay, we're going to do a closing treatment. And if you have we'll start the treatment as always with a minute of silence. If you have a request and you want to put it in the chat, I will add it into the treatment. But for right now, I just invite you to join with me in this minute of silence. And take a deep breath. And as you let it out, take another that's just a little deeper. And relax. So here's what I know. In as many times as it is necessary, I remember that God is all there is, and that God is good. In fact, it is the good to which there is no opposition. This power that is absolute love, peace, joy, is the very essence of all that exists. Visible, invisible, it is all. So as we just breathe that in, I remember that with every breath, that everything I am, everything you are, is that representation of wholeness. So I take another breath, and I remember that we are the promise. We are the ones we've been waiting for. I remember that we are love, beauty, peace, and wholeness here on earth, and that we bring that essence to our lives right now, today. And with another breath, I remember that all we could want has already been given by the divine being, and that our part is to listen and accept. I remember that what is true for me is true for every being on the planet, and that together we are powerful beyond measure. I remember that together we can see and love each other into lives that are healthy, meaningful, sustainable, prosperous, and that each of us, each and every one of us, feels the yes in that, the clarity in that. So standing on that promise that everything needed has already been given, I release for myself and everyone here every fear, every concern, every activity, every thought that is contrary to the complete manifestation of the greater good. Today, with deep gratitude, I claim good for everyone and for all. Today, I am grateful for compassionate loving, listening, forgiving, and healing. And today, with each successive breath, I see, I love, I respect, I appreciate every individual who crosses my path. And as I release this breath, I am also releasing this treatment into the unconditional law that always and in all ways simply says yes. And I let it be so. And so it is. So I took a quick look. I didn't see any other requests, even though I do see some great comments about practices. So I hope you all take a look at that. It's good. Thank you. So now we're going to, let's just take another deep breath, which allows us, as we release this part of the service and move into our practice of circulation, which is, of course, the time where we look at our offering. And I just, again, it is only because of the generosity of all of you and a few others that are not here today that we are able to keep this going. So being a part of the giving, being a part of the offering, that's really important. So there are 3 ways to give. The first is, you can mail a check to the church just like that. If you have electronic bill pay, can make the center payee and pay that way. And now we also have a PayPal button on the website. So you can go to www.cslukiah.org. Just hit that donate button. It's very simple, and you'll be there, and it'll be really easy. So, okay. So I am going to put up our offering affirmation. And so you could please join with me in saying this together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies this gift. With all my heart and with all my mind, I know I am saying yes to something I value. With all others present here, we dedicate these gifts to the values and visions we share. And so it is. So, okay, I just have a couple of quick announcements. After the service, we will have some time to just visit. So if you want to just stay on, don't go anywhere, just stay on. We'll come back and we'll stop the recording, but everybody will have an opportunity to share, and you can share something that moved you, like Mary's amazing song, Victoria's amazing treatment. You can share something like that, or you can just talk about your intention for the upcoming week. But please, if you can stay and visit for a while, that would be great. The other thing I want to also let you know is in the last newsletter that just went out a couple of days ago, in that newsletter, there's an intentional giving form, and it's really important that those get filled out and returned to the center. Probably the easiest way to do that is just to, print it out, fill it out, but you can just in the newsletter, if you can fill it out, you can just return it, or just send back, in an email, you could send back what your intention is. But we'd really like to have that done, before the end of the year. We usually let it go on for quite a while, but, please do that so we know how to prepare for our upcoming year. So, and after the chat, we're going to be having a board meeting. So I'm going to be sitting here for a while. You don't all have to stay for the board meeting. Those of you that are staying for the board meeting know who you are. So thank you again so much for being here. And Mary, Buckley, could you take us out with a song?
Okay. Well, for once, this is kind of self-explanatory, so I don't think it needs an introduction. I am going to play my own recording, so I hope you can hear some harmonies with it. So,
I'm opening up the present of this moment. Let's see what's inside. I'm opening up the present of this moment. Let's see what's inside. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Disconnected heads, we can sing with each other. We're meeting on Zoom. Disconnected heads, there's a cat on the table. Disconnected heads, someone's flushing a toilet. Disconnected heads, we don't have any pants on. We're meeting on Zoom. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Fear moves in my chest. I breathe out, then I breathe in. One breath at a time. Joy moves in my chest. I breathe out, I breathe in, one breath at a time. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sitting on the sand, watching ducks float and fly by. They don't read the news. Sitting on the sand, watching ducks float and fly by. They don't read the news. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Sing a haiku, sing a haiku, sing a haiku. Thank you for
Wow, Mary, that was great.
It's so fun. Chorus has been singing it, and people can like make up their own or bring their own haikus. The only rule is you have to sing it instead of say it. So.
That's adorable. I loved it. So, okay, well, I just want to thank all of you for being here today. It's been, as always, a great pleasure to see all of you. And I just want to mention really quick that she had to leave, but Ginny Reynolds was on today. Did you guys see that? That was very cool. So I'll reach out to her this week and just go, oh, thanks for coming. Come back. So, and Jack's here. So, hey, Jack. So, okay. Love you all. And see you on the other side. Namaste.